Welcome, friend, to the Fresh Ideas podcast. I am your host, Alejo Porras. And no, this is not a baking show, but if you feel like you work hard as a creative and you still don't see results, I'll give you some food for thought. In this show, I will bring guests, or sometimes I'll just share tips myself with recipes for success, advice that can bring you inspiration, practical tips, and new perspectives that you can apply to your own business and your life. Today, I am chatting with Mike Foster. I cannot wait to share this episode with you. This is the menu for today. For appetizers, what is a primal question and why it matters? Main course, what is good enough paired with living in the statement? And for dessert, we have the power of friction. Pay attention to those topics throughout this conversation. And without further ado, let's dive into the conversation. Enjoy. Welcome, guys, to this new edition of the Fresh Ideas podcast. I'm today here excited to introduce you to Mike Foster, an amazing guy that I met with serendipity at a conference and became a client. And now we are here just chatting about stuff that is really, really interesting. I think you're going to enjoy this episode because we're diving deep into who we are and what we crave and how do we manage life according to that. So, Mike, thank you so much for taking the time. I'm so excited to just chat with you today.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm excited about this conversation.
So let's start with this. I like to start with this question. What are you most looking forward to this year?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's interesting because we probably should think about that question more in our life. Like, what are we desiring? What are we wanting? What are the things that are drawing our attention and energy? And so, like, for me, this year has really been a year of just kind of cutting through the forest and finding new opportunities and new doors to walk through. And so, like, for me, my intention in life and how I'm showing up for life is what's possible, what do I need to, what's new, versus spending this year where I am kind of repeating the same things, and the current things are good things. I think for a lot of us, it's like, hey, it's not that our life is a bad life, but challenging myself to find the new, find and so I'm just like learning new stuff. I'm trying to learn things that are totally out of my comfort zone or not aligned with my particular vocational focus. And just like, I'm learning a lot of stuff about AI right now. I have no idea how AI is going to impact my business or how I'm experimenting, but I'm excited about learning. I'm excited about discovery this year. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Cool, man. It's always great to have an open perspective because change is the only thing that's permanent, right?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, but I love the metaphor of like cutting through the forest because it just sounds like an adventure, right? Like an exploration is not daunting. It could be dangerous, but at the same time, there's a world of possibility once you cut through it and discover an oasis or a beautiful scene. So let's chime into the primal questions because this is the thing that you're most known for. Could you like briefly explain to our audience what are the primal questions and how do they influence our life?
Yeah, so this is the work that I have been doing for many years now of helping people understand why they do what they do. What is the core motivator of the choices that we make, both professionally and in our relationships, and what risks we take and what risks we don't take, to help us understand our own sort of triggers and why we react in a certain emotional way. And so the Primal Question is based on 5 years of research, actually 7 years of research now, but when the book came out, it was 5 years of research. 100,000 assessments, 22 group labs, 6,000 hours of one-on-one interviews, all to boil it down to these 7 questions that we're asking, every human being is asking. And it's one of those questions that is connected, all those questions are connected to a core need. It's really about needs-based coaching or needs-based therapy. It's about understanding the core need or that primal need that is represented in a question that we ask every day, all day long, about could be a safety, love, belonging, success, value, financial security, or purpose. And so these 7 questions are a way for us to better understand ourselves and to better understand the people that we're interacting with.
Do you, from your experience looking at all this data, I guess, like all these interviews, all this research and all that, have you noticed that people tend to kind of stay in a core primal question most of their lives, or is it like a seasonal thing? I'm curious because I made the assessment. I'm number 3. My primal question is, am I loved? And but I could see myself in the other questions as well.
Yes.
So what's your experience with that?
Yeah, so the thesis of the work it looks and sounds like this. We are imprinted with a primal question, a singular primal question in our early childhood. And that question, we continue to subconsciously ask this question over and over again. So like for you, the primal question of am I loved gets imprinted in early childhood. And think of it this way, our early childhood it's a childhood of questions, trying to figure out how the world works, right? We're these sponges that are just soaking in all kinds of information. And we're getting all kinds of different answers to our core needs of yeses and nos and maybes. And what happens with the thesis of the primal question is one question around a primal need, a core need that we have as human beings, gets answered with a no or a maybe, or goes completely unanswered, okay? And so we then take that question, we keep subconsciously asking that as an adult. And when we get a yes to that question, that core need is met of, am I loved? You get a yes. Leo feels great. It feels good. It's like he's the fullness of himself and he's his best self. But when you answer it with a no or a maybe, or you get a no or a maybe, or it feels like a no or a maybe coming at that question of, am I loved? And that is really, that particular question has to do with being seen, known, and heard, okay? Those are the things that are important to you in terms of relationship. And when you get a yes to being seen, known, and heard, bam, awesome, you feel great. But when you get that no or maybe, you go into the scramble. And the scramble is just all the ways that we try to meet that need in an unhealthy way, almost like force a yes. And so all 7 questions are going to be real human needs, and we're all going to relate to all 7 at some level, okay? Because they are part of the human experience. They're needs that all human beings have. But again, the premise of the primal question is that there's a singular question that is driving the ship, okay? That is really primary in terms of how you show up in the world and the power that need has in your life, where some of the other, let's say the other 6 needs are not as powerful in your life.
Do you feel like there's a possibility to answer that question irresolutely, or is it just like a matter of multiple reinforcement? Does that make sense?
Yeah, in terms of like, how do we live with that question in a more healthy way? Like to say, hey, listen, this question, one of the things I tell people is this. There's 2 ways to show up into our life and into our day today. We can be asking the question, or we can be living in the statement. And this is what I talk about in terms of primal truth living. I talk about this concept in the book. And it's so my primal question is, am I safe? Okay, which is primal question number 1. If I show up to my day and I play the am I safe question game in my relationships, in my work, that is giving all the power to external forces and external experiences to whether I'm getting a yes, no, or maybe to that question, okay? And I'm totally reliant on what happens in my interactions with life today, of whether I feel safe or not. So the new way of living, and this is the primal truth living, is where we stop asking the question and we start living in the statement. where I show up today and I go, I am safe. See, so much of our way of seeing the world is through the lens of a wounded child, okay? It is the wounded part of Mike Foster who experienced something in his early childhood where he didn't feel safe. And he's not sure if he's safe. And so now he's like very, very concerned about his safety. And sometimes it's trauma, sometimes it's confusion, sometimes it's just hurt. Sometimes somebody said something, in our family, and it's just, so we got a lot of this, what I just call the wounded kid. And what happens is we use our kid logic, the things that we figured out, the things that Mike Foster figured out how to be safe in his childhood. We then bring those ideas and concepts to our adult lives and keep using kid logic. So when I'm working with clients or teaching workshops or speaking or whatever I'm doing, my invitation to people is kind of twofold. Number one, I invite them to from the question to the statement, okay? That we can live our lives not from this question and giving all the power to however, whether it's a yes, no, or maybe of whether how we're gonna feel today, to a place of self-leadership where we say, no, I'm gonna actually live in the statement today, not ask the question. And then the second part, the other invitation that I give people is to move from the kid logic, all these strategies that you use to meet your need, usually unhealthy coping mechanisms to meet that need. We can now use adult wisdom and say, okay, I actually can look, how would I meet this need in a healthy way? Because the need is the need is the need. You can't deny the fact that you need love, okay? And that you want to be seen, known, and heard, or that I need safety, okay? I can't deny the need, but what I want to do is become a person who meets that need in a wise, healthy, self-leadership way.
This is deep. From asking the question, am I, to the statement, I am.
Yes.
It sounds to me like it requires a lot of self-work, self-reflection, and I wonder like the amount of awareness that needs to take for people to make the affirmation with conviction and not feel like it's a lie trying to cheat yourself into it, right? Mm-hmm. So can we nuance, like zoom in a little bit into that? Because it can get dangerously in the territory of like you just repeat affirmations and your life changes,
right? Yeah.
Right? So like how do we, and let's talk specifically about creatives too, because you have a background in design, so you're very familiar with how in the creative space we struggle with this situation of bringing this awareness to ourselves. So
yes,
how can we as creatives bring that awareness to ourselves, understand that we are, instead of questioning if we are, whatever primary question we have, in a healthy way?
Yeah, so two ways I want to answer the question. Number one, let me just give you from a non-creative standpoint, and then there's a question that actually I think very much resonates with a lot of creatives. One primal question that's tends to be very specific to creatives, but this isn't just affirmations. This isn't just like telling myself something so that I could hope that it would be true. All right. Like I just like repeat after me, I am safe. That's not what we're doing here. Okay. What we're doing is inviting your life and your perspective and your mindset into actually a truer truth. Okay. And what I mean by that is when I wonder and question my own safety, and I'm seeing my life through the kid logic, and I'm asking the question, am I safe? I'm actually not living in the truest truth. And what I mean by that is I forget that I'm 6'4", 220 pounds, okay? I still see myself in sort of my identity and my perspective as if I'm a little kid who can't protect himself, okay? I also know that my healthy adult wisdom, what's truer truth is I have resource now where I can protect myself. I have a voice. I have autonomy and freedom of what I'm going to have to do or not have to do. See, and so many times it's not just like this daily affirmation thing, even though that can be helpful. It's inviting people into truth. So let's say this, like you could show up to your day right now and go, oh, I don't know if I'm loved. I don't feel loved. Nobody wants to know me. Nobody wants to see me. Nobody's listening. And I just say like baloney. We should go talk to your wife, right?
Yeah.
We should ask her the question. So Alejo doesn't think you love him, right? Is that true? What do you mean? I'm madly in love with him. Okay.
Yeah.
That's the truth. Okay. So but you have, just like I have, this kid logic part of us, this kind of wounded kid who's like, I'm not sure.
I like this. Before you mentioned the creative thing, I was actually having a conversation recently with somebody who was talking about how nervous they get when they go to live events. They do the same thing that I do. And I get it, because it can be nerve-wracking being in front of everybody, doing things live. And many years ago, I heard this thing that anxiety and excitement physiologically are the same. The body is having the first physiological response, and what changes is kind of the perspective. Now, if you go to like a panic attack, that would be very different, right? But in general terms, a healthy anxiety is equal to excitement. It's just how we choose to see the situation.
Exactly.
And this person mentioned that it was hard for them to do it because they felt like they were lying to themselves. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. Like it's valid to be in, to kind of have that approach, right? And maybe it works differently for them. From my perspective, I saw it as, okay, what's the evidence here? Like, if I feel anxious or nervous, what am I, like, what's the threat? You know, what the threat? Yeah. Like, what's the worst that could happen right now? Did I make a typo? Right? And with the one exception of that one time that I was doing a live event and the keynote speaker was talking and the fire alarm went off and we had to evacuate the building, that was the only time that I've been in real physical danger in my line of work. Most of the time, most of the danger, it's assumptions in my head and are things that are not really threatening me. So for me saying I'm excited, it's not a lie, because what I do is really exciting. People get very excited about it. So I chose to focus on that. And it just resonates with this. It's kind of like bringing, am I making assumptions, or am I living what you mentioned, the truest truth? Kind of like putting your thoughts on trial and be like, what's the evidence of what you're saying right now?
Exactly.
Like, would it hold in court?
Yeah.
Or are you just making things up? So
Yeah, it's living in facts. And again, that's inviting our adult wisdom, or the adult's perspective, when so often we're just kind of living in this uninvestigated kid logic and strategies and beliefs. Like, of course, this is a scary thing. Like, well, is it actually? Because the only thing that might happen here is we might have a typo, and nobody's going to be thrown in jail for that, or nobody's going to be killed over that, or there's nobody going to be injured over this. But it's like, again, it feels very real to us. And I want to empathize with the feeling and the how true it actually feels, like, oh, this is very dangerous, okay, when really it's not. And so that's why I'm using the word like a truer truth, a more abundant truth, a more built out truth, a more investigated truth, because the things that we do feel are real, but there's something else that needs to be considered here.
now tell us a little bit, how can creatives tackle this?
Yeah, so one of the things that in my background in creative and the creative field is I had a design firm that I founded and started with a friend of mine, and was the creative principal at it for 10 years, and had a lot of success, a lot of different, I think we're probably, when I left the company, there was like 60, 70, the company's still in existence today. It's probably 60, 70 creatives that I was working with every single day on projects. So I very much love and respect the gifts that creatives bring to the world, and have so much respect for it and admiration of it. But there are some unique challenges that come with being a creative that I think a lot of other people or other career paths don't face. And one of the questions is question number 6 is, am I good enough? And one of the things that often happens in the creative field, and when I was working with creatives, is that giving feedback or criticism can often stir up a lot for people, okay, in the creative arts, because they're guarding a question in their heart, a primal question of, am I good enough? And so feedback or critique or, hey, I'm not sure I love that, okay, can we do this? That feels like a no to their primal question of, am I good enough? That somehow they're flawed, they're not measuring up, that they're not good enough. Okay, so for a creative to be aware, if that's your primal question, again, creatives can have different questions, but I saw that question pop up a lot, and it usually popped up when it came to review. And so if you're, as a creative, noticing like, hey, I feel like a lot of pushback, like one of the things I notice about you, Alejo, is I don't think you struggle with that at all. Okay? Because you have a different primal question. Okay? Your question is much more about relationship. Now, there is some the concept of value sits a bit within the am I loved question, but it's a very different for am I good enough, which is a different type of value. Where am I good enough is really around performance, like it's a performance orientation, and like if they don't measure up or it's not perfect or there is a typo, like that's an indictment on their whole self-worth, okay? Whereas you're going to resonate with that in a very different way. You're going to have a very different relationship to it. And so again, we want to understand the question that is driving our life, because it really has a lot of implications in how we present our art, how we develop our art, how we work with others within our art, that both have pros and cons attached to it.
If you've made it this far in the conversation, it probably means that you're liking what you're hearing. And in that case, I'm going to ask you a very, very small but very meaningful favor. Would you please share this episode and tag me on Instagram? See, I cannot hear you. I cannot see you. The only way that I can know if I'm doing something right is if I get feedback from you, and sharing these things with other people, it's a great way for me to understand that I'm doing something right. So it helps me keep going, and it also gives me the fuel to keep pushing the boundaries and doing way better things. So thank you so much for listening, and now let's go back to the show. That is so on point. The good and it's funny because recently I was doing a workshop in the Netherlands, and we addressed this thing, the question of like, what is enough? Because I hear it a lot. I don't feel like I'm good enough for charging this amount of money,
yes.
Or for approaching this kind of clients. So like I always ask them, okay, so like what is enough? And they're like, what do you mean? Yeah, like what is enough? Could you?
Yes.
Because you're saying that you're not good enough, but if you don't define it, how do you know you're attaining it? Maybe you already attained it and you haven't even noticed. But it's so funny because I love feedback. Like
you do.
I crave it. I really want people to tell me if I'm doing something wrong, if I'm doing something right, and even options of how can I do things differently, because my motto is Kaizen, like always improving, always doing something that can upgrade, my skills. But when a client doesn't leave me a review or like ghosts me, it's like, I thought we like each other, So it's just so different for me because I'm more focused in the relationship aspect.
That's right.
And in the work, it's just like I'm all for it. And even if somebody's like super direct with me to the point of maybe even rude, I don't take it personally. I'm like, oh, thank you. I really, really appreciate this. So thanks for pointing it out. This is so incredible. So like how
can I say another thing that I think you do really well in your business? As again, I'm a client, a very happy client, by the way. And even before we started talking, I'm like, I got some more work for you. The other thing, you talk about value and like the question 6 of like, what do I charge? And I'm really uncomfortable with that. I've always felt like my interactions with you, you've been very clear on your value and what you charge and what you're worth. And I really appreciate that from this side of it, to where it's you're not coming at that value and worth thing from a question. You're coming from it from a statement. Okay, you know what you charge. You know what your time is worth. You know the outcomes that you'll get. And I love that. It's, as a client, it's very helpful that it's like, okay, this is what it is. He's very clear on it. It's, I'm not going to start a project with Alejo, and he's like, because he didn't understand his worth, he undercharged me. So he's going to be like juggling 1,000 other projects. I'm not going to be able to get a hold of him, or he's going to be doing this work and he's going to be very resentful because I'm underpaying him, like all of that stuff when we do not understand values. So like when you think about a Q6, am I good enough? Like those are things that are going to undermine your whole artistry. And it's not good for you, but it's not good for your art, and it's really not good for your clients.
So let's we cannot solve it in, a few minutes, but what can people who struggle with this, creative people who struggle with the am I good enough question, what things can they do to start overcoming this, embracing it maybe, and just kind of like coping with it? I don't know, what would be the thriving with it? What would be the right word for it?
Yeah, well, one of the things I might say is I come back to one of the drawings that you did, which it's one of my favorite drawings. And so I had you draw some pictures for each question, okay? And for this particular question, am I good enough? You drew 2 ice cream cones, and as like a personified 2 ice cream cones. And then the third entity, or the third person in that picture, was broccoli. Okay. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
Okay. And I love this because I think it's such a beautiful picture of what is actually happening, is that the person who's asking the question, am I good enough, sees themselves as broccoli, and they're comparing themselves to everybody else, and they think everybody else is an ice cream cone. Okay. And I think the first maybe challenge that I would say to this person is, how do we deal with this? Is like, don't forget you're an ice cream cone too. Okay. Do not see yourself as a piece of broccoli surrounded by ice cream cones. It's that's a visualization. That's a picture that if you could capture that would be a very good starting point to standing in the statement, I am good enough, versus the question, am I good enough?
I'm an ice cream cone. I'm freaking cool. That'll be the slogan.
Yes.
So let's kind of dive in a little bit more into that. When you mentioned at the beginning that all these situations of the primal questions are kind of imprinted in childhood because we probably experience a lack of something, or we weren't answered something that was important for us. I found this quote in your Instagram, and I would love for you to dive into this. It says, a lot about love will be taught to you by people who didn't love you. Welcome every lesson. Use it all for good. Yes. How can we redeem the hurt, Mike?
I think that's the premise of all the work that I do, is that I have this fundamental belief that whatever hurt or wounding or trauma or disappointment or failure that we experienced in the earlier parts of our stories, that all of it serves a purpose. All of it serves a point to benefit you and the world. I look at just kind of general principles like pain, not welcomed, not exactly a lot of fun, but filled with great purpose. It is how we grow. It is how we become the people that we become. It's where we find strength. I don't find strength through just a life of rainbows and unicorns. Okay, I don't find. There's not a lot of value in that. when I'm doing workshops, I will often bring a match and a matchbook out, and I'll say, hey, this match in its current state holds what we call potential energy. Okay, it has a lot of potential, has a lot. I mean, but in its current state, it does nothing. It just holds potential energy. In order to release it into a new state, and the new state, when you light a match and it actually catches on fire, that's kinetic energy. Okay, and kinetic energy can do a lot. I can light candles. I can light a fireplace. Has a lot of power. Like it can burn down an entire community with just the kinetic energy, moving it from potential to kinetic. And the point is, the only way to release kinetic energy in that match is you need the friction of the matchbox. You have to drag that match across friction to unlock the kinetic energy. And so when I think about, when we weren't loved well in our childhood, okay, when we were rejected, when we grew up in a home of chaos and neglect, when we didn't feel like we belonged, whatever the friction is, okay, the point of that, and this is a big idea, but it's a really important one for our lives. The idea is not for it to break us. It is not for it to limit us or to constrict our lives. It is meant to be the friction of that matchbox that unlocks the kinetic energy for our life and our potential and our ability to really impact the world for good.
This is so good. And it's not only for a primal question itself. Like if you apply it to any endeavor in life, there's resistance in every aspect of our lives. Just like living is an act of defiance against dying in a way.
Yes,
you know, because if we stop breathing, we just kind of die. So we're like constantly doing these things to stay alive. But more than staying alive, it's just like thriving, creating, pursuing that passion that we have, those ideas that we cannot stand them being invisible or unlocked, in our lives. And I remember this one time talking about, I did a carousel on Instagram that was like a pan view of, you had a camera that looked at the sky, and you see in every cloud as you were going down things that are creative, like ideas, books, and things like you want to make into existence. And when you're going all the way down, the last panel is this person just like creating friction with a pair of sticks to create that fire. And the idea of this is like all our creative endeavors come from friction, so we should embrace the friction, which is exactly what you're doing. Is not only from a personal perspective, how do we live lives that are in our truth, but also how do we unlock all that potential, right? All those ideas, all that art that is living within us, which I find so amazing, because we live in a society that is very comfortable, right? Like everything relies on convenience, and we don't have to struggle very much. And I've said this a few times, like we kind of worship convenience, and I think it has done us a lot of damage. Like, of course, it's great to chat, through the internet, like order stuff online and all that. Like, there's benefits, of course, but I'm not saying it's evil per se, but our over-reliance on things being easy, maybe it's taking a toll in our creativity, don't you think?
Yeah, I'm so with you. I'm an older gentleman. I'm like 54 years old. So sometimes I feel like some of my beliefs about our current society are just like, oh, it's because I'm an old fart and an old man. Like I live in San Diego, and in There is just like an outbreak of electric bicycles around here, and kids no longer ride regular bicycles; they ride electric bicycles, and they just have to turn the little handle, and the bike goes right. I'm thinking, these are not the lessons that I want to be teaching my kids. That you can go up a hill, and all you have to do is turn the little knob, and you'll have an assistance of not feeling how difficult it is to go up that hill. Now, this is like a little anecdotal thing, but there's a part of this that we are robbing people of the true pathway to obtaining and connecting with their brilliance, connecting with their inner strength, connecting with the ability to do hard things, because we have unfortunately designed a society, to your point, where we're kind of addicted to convenience. We love it. We love comfort zones. But I am telling you that we started this whole conversation about, I want to be like cutting through forests. Like I'm creating friction, adding friction to my life, because I know that's how I grow. There's something exciting around that. Yes, it's hard sometimes, and I feel, like maybe I'm not making progress, or I got to fight a little bit harder for this thing, or I have to work a little bit later. But that is where the beauty of life is birthed. It is not birthed in comfort.
Yeah, and it's great because you mentioned that your primal question is safety.
Yes.
So going into the unknown is like the opposite of what you're craving, but you're still
Absolutely.
facing it, right? So, ladies and gentlemen, Mike walks the talk. Now, I am a firm believer that all of us who feel like we've achieved good things in life and unlocked things in our life, we have not done that alone. We all step in the shoulders of giants. So I'm very curious, if you remember a mentor, a coach, a teacher in your life that has helped you grow, and maybe an advice that you remember the most from them.
Yeah, I am very, very blessed to have some amazing people in my life and have been part of my life for a very long time. I have friendships, and probably more than, it'd be like friendships on steroids is probably the way I would describe it, because it's more than just friendship. It's like an advocacy relationship. It's like we are like we'll move dead bodies for each other if needed. And bury dead bodies if that were required. Hopefully none of my friends will need me to bury a dead body for them, but I would do it. That kind of relationship. And so I feel very blessed, number one, and I could not agree more that our society sets us up to be lone rangers. Our society celebrates individualism, and I think that's a unfortunate thing, that people become great, we become our best selves because of the people we put around us and doing life together. Doesn't mean you have to have 1,000 friends, but you should have a few that you are doing you're digging in with. And so for me, it was like one of my friends is named Bill, and he's about, I don't know, 10, 15 years older than me. We've been journeying together for 20 plus years. And the thing that Bill and I do, and this is where I think it's really important to kind of how we frame these relationships and how they influence us. The way that Bill has mentored me, we would never use that word, by the way. We never sit down to have mentoring sessions, nothing like that. But what I've done with my relationship with Bill and the way Bill has influenced my life in a radical way was I watched him. I simply watched how he communicated with people. I watched how he handled stress. I watched how he talked to his wife. I listened to how he talked about his kids, and I saw the kind of things that he put his money into, and the things that he cared about and the things that he didn't care about. And just through this, like, I don't want to say osmosis, but like just being around his energy field and who he was as a person has impacted me so much, because it gave me this like compare and contrast, not in an unhealthy way. It wasn't like, oh yeah, Bill's so much better than me at this. It's like it set an example of like, okay, that's the model. And I actually think creatives, we tend to be very visual people. So having an avatar for health and growth is really important. To have somebody in our life to say, like, I want to be more like that guy. And not in sort of a jealous or envious way or an insecure way, but it's like he represents values I want to grow. And so what is he doing? I'm going to study that. I'm going to look at that. And so that's, I think of Bill as like one of the most profound, important relationships in my life. Not because we did official mentoring or impact or he said some statement over me, 20 years ago. It was like, I just watched him.
That's so amazing. It reminds me when I entered my undergrad and I was in my first drawing class and I felt so inadequate. I was in, but there was this bell pepper, on a table and we had to draw it. And I was like, oh man, I'm really terrible here. What am I doing here? So I stopped.
You were the broccoli around ice cream cone?
I was the broccoli. Yeah. I stopped and I walked around to see what my other, classmates were doing. And I noticed two things. One of them, all of them were amazing. 99% of them were amazing. There were some that were struggling very hard, but 99% of them were amazing. And the second thing is like they were amazing differently because all of them had different styles that came out. So what I started doing is I started pointing out those differences. I was like, oh, I like the way that you do the line. I was like, oh, the contrast here is really cool. And they kind of felt encouraged to do the same. So they took breaks and started doing the same with everybody and kind of spread like wildfire. Suddenly everybody was telling everybody what they were good at, what they admire about them. And we were all envying each other's work. I'm coding here because it was not envy. It was a sort of like, hey, we are all good in different things and we can grow together. And I can pinpoint that. And they were not mentors, by any chance, but there's this saying that says like when the disciple is ready, the master will appear. And I feel like I was ready to learn, to like suck it all in, right? And by being surrounded by people who were better than me in one way or another, it helped me grow as well. So I can totally relate to that because if I had done that online, I don't know if it would have been the same. Just like being around these people and, sucking their energy in a way, like, and then feeding into each other was very, very helpful. One last question, Mike, and we'll wrap this up. You're often speaking, leading workshops, cutting grass to the forest to new things with AI, and all about the primal gifts, right? So I'm just very curious, as a human, let's take off the hat of like the professional psychologist, the personal development coach thing, like you as a human. When you're not doing all that, what makes you happy? Like small things in life that just you enjoy really, really, really well.
Yeah, it's very simple answer to that question for me, and I'm so clear on it, and I'm so glad that I have the clarity. But to me, being in nature, and there's something for me about my soul longs for being around things that make me feel very small and insignificant. And when I'm in nature, and sort of nature has no opinion, it has no criticism, it has no anxiety in it. It's just sort of like, it's just there, and it's gorgeous, and it's stunning, and it's like, it will be here 1,000 years after I'm gone. That kind of experience for me, like that is such a simple pleasure, but such a profound thing for me. And I am like so aware of like, I can do all the stuff, and there's stuff like the hustle, right? We're all doing the hustle, but carving out time for me to, like, Yosemite National Forest to me is like, when I'm there, I'm like, I don't know what I'm experiencing right now, but it is exactly like I just feel it's so aligned and so grounded. And I do use that thing of just nature makes me feel insignificant, and that's a happy thing for me, because it reminds me that, like, to appreciate more of this Yosemite National Forest and like the simple things versus all the things that I think are super important that actually are not, they're not going to be here. The things that ever I'm work like this podcast won't be here in 1,000 years. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe it will somewhere, but it probably won't matter.
Yeah. Yeah. Everything passes. And that's so grounding. When you mentioned Yosemite, I haven't been to Yosemite, but a few years ago, I went with two friends. I did a road trip, and my breath was taken away when we walked around Zion National Park.
Yeah, Zion's another beautiful place.
And I think that's one of the very few times in my life where I've experienced awe. Like,
Yeah,
this is awe. Like, I
yeah.
just couldn't believe it. And it's a longing to go back there,
Hmm.
even though, it makes me feel insignificant in a way. It's like, it's not like I don't matter, but it's just like, hey, I shouldn't take myself so seriously and just kind
Yes.
of enjoy that we get to experience life. We
Yeah.
get to pursue things, and not only answer our question, but also help others, in their journey as well. Mike, this has been an amazing conversation. I thank you so much for taking the time to chat. Tell just the people here, how can they find you online, or well, hopefully you don't give your address so they don't go knocking on your door, but like, where can they find you online and
Come
learn more
on
about what
over.
you do?
Yeah, the best way to find me and to learn more about the Primal Questions and actually to see some of your amazing artwork is just primalquestion.com. There's actually a free assessment there where you can take an assessment to discover your primal question, and lots of different videos and different things. The book, The Seven Primal Questions, is available at amazon.com. There it is. And yeah, and then in terms of social media, I spend most of my time, probably only avenue for social media is Instagram. I'm just Mike Foster 2000 on Instagram, and yeah, so those are probably the best things. But I'd say, hey, go take the assessment, go pick up a copy of the book. It's a great, easy read, easy way to start understanding the core drivers of our life and why we do what we do.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mike, so much.
Thanks, Leo.
That's all for today's episode. Thank you, Mike, for helping us understand how to get rid of our kid logic so that we can live as adults, how to approach life living in the statement as opposed to living in our question, and how to embrace discomfort so that we can grow, not only personally, but also in our careers. And thank you for listening to the Fresh Ideas podcast, where we believe that artists who pair their craft with business knowledge never starve. And that's why we invite experts like Mike to reveal the recipes of success so you can try them in your business, in your life, and see how it goes. Until the next one, thank you. Pura vida.